So last week we talked about, you can turn to 2 Samuel 6, and also put your finger in 1 Chronicles 15, a little bit of a parallel passages or account. There's a lot in this, and so we're going to be having a little bit of a review from last week, and then we'll layer into it with some additional thoughts. But I was thinking one of the main lessons of today, what we're going to study, is what is a proper response to chastisement or rebuke. And sometimes you ever get the feeling like, okay, Lord, I got the lesson. You've shown me, I get it, I understand, okay, I'm good. And that was kind of happening to me recently. I got up yesterday to head out to work, and my sewage was backed up. And I can't fix it now, I've got to go to work. So we came last night, and it's like, oh yeah, right, our sewage is backed up. And it's still backed up, but here we are. So I was like, well, all right, I'm still trying to understand why God allows certain things to happen. He does these things to teach us something if we'll look for it. Anyway, so in 2 Samuel chapter 6, I'm just going to start reading. I'm going to make a little bit of commentary, but then I'm going to lay out some ideas and kind of give you an idea where we're going. And again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judah to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, that dwelleth between the cherubims. So, before I get into this, let's talk about what David is trying to do and why he's trying to do it. What is David trying to do? Somebody? What's his objective?
Return it to Jerusalem.
Okay, well, bring it to Jerusalem, right? He has just established Jerusalem as the city of God. So now we have Mount Zion, the city of God, established. David is there living. And if you flip over to 1 Chronicles 15, notice verse 1 here. It says, and David made him houses in the city of David. So that's for him to live in, right? And those who are part of his household. And prepared a place for the ark of God and pitched for it a tent. Now, that's interesting in and of itself. It's not a house. So when we get to chapter 7, that issue will be addressed. But for now, at least there's a place that is being set aside to receive the ark of God, right? Now, what is the significance of the ark to the people of Israel?
The presence of God.
Right. It represents the presence of God. And what else might it represent, along with the presence of God?
Glory.
It starts with the word C, covenant. The covenant of God, right? So you have the covenant and the literal presence, glory, the Shekinah glory of God that has been missing from among the people. So David has just received all this power. He's consolidated the children of Israel around himself now. He could have just sat back on his laurels, so to speak, and just remained the supreme commander of the nation of Israel and let it go at that. And humanly speaking, he would have looked very successful, right? But the thing we have to appreciate about David was that he knew he really wasn't at all successful but for the Lord, and to not bring the Lord into the center of focus would have been a big oversight. It would have been overlooking an important thing. So he has a good goal here to bring the ark into Jerusalem. Look at verse 3 of 2 Samuel 6. And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart. Now, somewhere I read that these sons, and somebody can cross-reference this if they want to verify this, but I did read in one of the commentaries that these two men were not, they were the tribe of Judah, apparently. And so if anybody wants to either confirm or contradict that, please feel free to research that. But I believe they were of the tribe of Judah. Now, why would that be significant? Getting ready to move the ark. Anybody know?
Only the Levites were
Supposed to be the Levites. Turn back to 1 Chronicles 15. Verse 2. Then David said, sorry if I'm going fast here. David said, none ought to carry the ark of God but the Levites, for them hath the Lord chosen to carry the ark of God to minister unto him forever. Now, as we go through this, as we skim and kind of reference this chapter, you're going to see in 1 Chronicles 15, you're going to see verse 3, David gathered all Israel together to Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord unto his place, which he had prepared for it. And David assembled the children of Aaron and the Levites. So now the Levites are involved, right? So this particular episode of this accounting in chapter 15 is part 2, not part 1, of the attempt to bring up the ark. And I also want you to point out verse 13. Let's back up to verse 12. And David is talking, and he's talking to the priests, and he said unto them, ye are the chief of the fathers of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, both ye and your brethren, that ye may bring up the ark of the Lord of Israel unto the place that I have prepared for it. For because ye did it not at the first. You did not what? You didn't prepare. You weren't even involved. The Lord, because ye did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us, for that we sought him not after the due order. What's the due order? Anybody?
in the right way.
Yeah, the way it was prescribed to when the ark was first established, the way it was supposed to be done. Right, Bob?
I have a question. Verse 3 said, they mentioned twice a new cart. What's significant about a new cart?
Okay, so let's go back. So when the Philistines, and you can research this out on your own if you want to, but when the Philistines moved the cart, moved the ark, they moved it on a cart. This is an application I'm going to see if I can make, okay? So they were successful in moving the ark, on their cart. Why did they get away with it and the children of Israel don't?
They didn't have the command.
What's that?
They didn't have the command. The command was to the children of Israel to be born on poles.
Yeah. The world gets away with a lot of things, don't they? David asked the question, why did the heathen rage? And people imagine vain things. Implication is they seem to thrive in their disobedience. And so the significance of the cart, Bob, is that it was new. Apparently they went through the trouble of making a new cart, and I think here's the thing we really must be sober about. They were using the way of the world rather than the prescribed way that God wanted it done. And we're getting ready to do this in the name of worshiping God. So I think this calls into question, this whole chapter, everything about how we gather to worship and how we do what we do.
That's good.
That it be done in the due order by the means of whatever has been prescribed. And give great consideration to that. And don't be looking to the ways of the world to how we should be doing it. Because there will be chastisement that will come upon us, I believe. And And the second part of the lesson is, if we listen, we can correct the course and still receive the blessing. Let's move on. Did you have another comment, Bob?
No.
Okay. So let's move on. Yeah. So they set the Ark of the Covenant upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying the ark of God. And Ahio went before the ark, that's in front of the ark. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood. Let's take note of this. Any of those who know the Church of Christ, for example, who don't like to use instruments, here we go. Instruments made of fir wood, even on harps and on psalteries. Anybody know what a psaltery is? It's kind of like our dulcimer. Okay, it's a stringed instrument built a lot like a dulcimer. And the old ones were plucked typically. The later ones they used a bow on. Has a really interesting sound. Each string is a note, so you have to have enough strings to do the melody with it. You're a musician over there, Andrew. Do you have anything to add to the psaltery?
That's pretty much what it is. I mean, yeah, it was an old string instrument, similar. Yeah, I think you said similar to our dulcimer. They used it kind of like we might use a guitar. They didn't strum all the strings necessarily, right. But it was just plucked. All that. It was kind of a precursor to a lute.
Show the room that. Thanks. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So the psaltery. So we've got. So let's look at the array of instruments here. We've got instruments made of fir. That's interesting. Harps, psalteries, timbrels. What's a timbrel?
Tambourine.
What's that?
Tambourine.
Like a tambourine. So it's a percussion instrument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a little percussion's okay, right? Apparently, a little proper percussion, not using the wrong way, right?
Hey, Chuck.
Yes.
This relates to, I wonder if this relates to what you were saying about they didn't do it God's way. So I wonder if that their focus is not on God, but it's all about the ark, about the mission, bringing it back. And God's maybe, this is a question for y'all, that God's not even in the picture. They're not even thinking about it. They're just thinking about the ark. And they're very self-focused, and they're out of touch.
I don't know. I'm not in their head. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they understood the significance of it. David has said so in his own words. Am I living in a house of cedar? There's no place for there's no place for God. Basically, God isn't going to just come without something representing Him to be in the house, any place or tent that He builds. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But maybe somebody else had a different opinion. I don't know. Pastor.
I think you're right on target as far as that is concerned. Obviously, I think they had the right heart. David was just enthralled with the fact that it was coming back. But it's just like us. Sometimes we do things our way rather than God's prescribed way. Just like Abel offered more excellent sacrifice.
Right.
Cain sacrificed.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
he didn't sacrifice the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's cool. God set up this lesson for you on Sunday when we were reminded the passage for the week from Judges. Every man did that which was right.
That's right. Yeah. It also made me think of the verse, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. So yeah, absolutely. So continuing on, we have these other instruments. We have cornets. What kind of an instrument is a cornet? Okay, it's brass. Would it have been brass back then?
No.
Ram's horn?
Yeah, normally ram's horn.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Chuck, I have one more.
Yes, sir.
So y'all can just hit the delete key on this, but we
Delete.
already know,
Just kidding.
we already know David's. I'm not saying that what he's doing now is wrong, but he's definitely doing some things that are wrong. So just because he's doing them doesn't mean that they're right, because he's already doing the wrong thing. He's already in the wrong mode. So I don't think we can just look at everything he's doing now, and everything he's doing might be suspect because he's already wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So just because we already know he's wrong, just because he's doing this doesn't automatically mean it's right. I'm
That's
not
right.
saying it's wrong.
That's true. Right. Was that in reference to the music?
I'm just saying that, he's already doing the wrong thing, and now I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying it's not, we can't say, he's already in the wrong mode, so we can't just say, well, now he's doing this and it's right.
Right. So what we would do is we would compare the second version, which was successful, to the first version and see which parts would have been part of that.
Bob has something to say.
Bob.
What that says to me as a Christian is that my worship to God should be right when I come into His presence in prayer, or I come into the church to worship. I'm going with the intent of worship. My motives, my intent, my heart needs to be right. It's incumbent on me to be in the right frame of mind to worship God when I come to this church. So many times we come to church, what kind of mind are we in? Are we coming in sleepwalking? Mm-hmm. Are we coming in expecting God to bless us? Are we coming in praying that the Lord empower our pastor and delivers from His word the message He has for us? And here, the only thing that comes from me is David always, before he did things, he had to say somewhere that he consulted the Lord. And I don't see anywhere prior to this that he consulted the Lord on how to do this. I don't understand the disciples by getting the ark back. But God always has a plan for what He wants us to do. And we need to consult Him before we just go headlong.
That is one of the themes of this whole study.
And
of
it's hard to do sometimes because sometimes you think, well, I can take care of that, or I can take care of this,
Right.
or I can fix that, or I can fix this. But I have found out the Lord has given me much aggravation with my wife's car. In the last 3 weeks, it's been sitting in the garage for me. Nobody said, have much wrong with it. I mean, tell me everything, and it's not bad. Fix it. It's not bad. And finally, the Lord said, why don't you just wait on me? Why don't you just wait on me?
Yeah.
And it may seem insignificant, but God wants us to consult Him on whatever we do. He has an answer. Brother Fred asked a question this morning. I told him, I said, I don't know what your question is, but I do know where the answer is at. And I think God has the answer for every one of life's problems. Very small, right there in these pages.
Amen.
And He just kind of teaches me to just wait, be patient. I'm working things, and so I just get word to Him, don't worry about it.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Brother Fred?
Again, why is David wrong, and where does it say so?
As far as how they're moving the Ark of the Covenant? Well, it's general knowledge, but maybe if you want us to reference it, it was general knowledge that the tribe of Levi is the one who was supposed to be the bearers of the Ark. Okay, so not any other tribe could do it. Number one, and number two, the means by which it had to be done had to be carried by poles.
Yes,
That's right.
And not on the cart. So or any other means. It had to be done by the poles. The Philistines, we have record that they did move it on carts. The Bible says that. So there's not enough time in this time to reference every single thing. But if anybody does need something specifically, prove it to me. Show me. We can do that via email and various methods as follow up if somebody wants to track that. Dave.
So this question just came to me. At what point was God displeased with them? Was He already displeased with them before He reached out and touched it? Is God excited about what they're doing and say yes, yes, as they're playing all this music? Or is He already, at what point did God say, no, I'm not pleased with you. I'm not up there excited about what you're doing. We might tend to think it's when He reached out and touched it, but it might have been a long time before. So God may not be pleased with what we're reading right now, even before they touch the ark.
Okay, so I'm going to say two things about that, and then anybody else that wants to jump in on this, let have that. Okay, so I believe that God, who is our Father, is like any father. He's pleased when we're attempting to do something that's a good thing to do. But just like when I'm learning to ride a bike or when I'm using power equipment, my Father is standing over me showing me how to use it, there's dangers involved. And there's, if I misuse a piece of equipment, like stand behind the table saw when I'm cutting a board a certain way, and there's such thing as kickback. And those laws of physics are not going to go away just because my father is standing there and likes that I'm learning and trying to do something. The way that God taught a lot of things in the Old Testament, a little differently than today, at least not exactly the same way, was ceremonial laws, ceremonial practices were used to teach spiritual truths. And so if something wasn't done in the right ceremonial way, there was a very harsh repercussion, like the priests going into the temple. They had the bells in their feet and all this. This was a means by which God taught right and wrong. This is right, this is wrong. And there were very definitive lines because of these ceremonial rules, okay? Well, now we have the dwelling of the Holy Spirit to help us and to aid us in that. And so that is augmented with us, I think. So maybe that would be a way to, a perspective, okay?
And I think
Sam?
the purpose for all those ceremonial rules is not just to have rules, it's because God's holy. And I think that's why God judges so harshly, is because when they disregard the Lord, when they don't inquire after the Lord, they're essentially, it's an affront to His holiness.
Right.
And they're not putting God in the position He needs to be in.
Right.
He needs to be preeminent.
Right.
And the only reason why we don't have to do all that now is because of Christ's righteousness,
Right.
His sacrifice, and He satisfied God's holiness and imputed it to us.
Yeah, I want to bring this into the lesson while we're at it. This is a good place to do it. All of this is being done so that God's presence can be felt among the people, and yet God has seen fit to allow the presence, His presence, to become instantaneo's available to us when we are saved. I wonder if we truly. Let's read on a bit. I want to show you what I mean by this. So verse 8, David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah unto this day.
We didn't read verse 6, did we?
Oh, maybe we did. Okay. And when they came to nation's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. Okay, so there's the hand of God meting out justice. That's the laws that God put in place. That's the kickback on the table saw, so to speak, and the reality of what happens when you disobey the word of God, because that's what was said. God had decreed if you touch it, you're going to die.
And this word error, my side note says it means rashness.
Rashness.
It was rash. It was just out of touch, oblivious.
Okay, thank you.
You know, he was just doing his job. It was to transport. He didn't understand what it was all about. It was all just
He shouldn't even been there.
Yeah.
Should have been
Somebody said, "Would you
should have been
help?"
somebody that one of the Levites that was trained in this area.
It was just like moving furniture to him. When
Right. Right.
Could you help us? Yeah, I'm available.
Yeah. Okay, now let's also appreciate the scope of this. Okay, how many people does Williams Bryce hold on a game day? 8,000. So just under half of that amount of people is here at this event. 30,000 chosen men, basically the same ones that were involved in the warfare to go up and win Jerusalem, are now present not to do war but to worship, right? And to bring this ark up. Now this was about a 10-mile trek. And you're basically asking about 30,000 people to go on a trek to go get a piece of furniture.
Marathon.
Doesn't that seem? It wasn't even a marathon. It wasn't even a 5K. You know, what doesn't that seem kind of out of scope? Unless you appreciate that what David's intent is to share. He wants to be able to take the presence of God and be able to bestow it onto the people. That's his intent. Okay? The people have to be there in order for that to happen. Part of this lesson here, I think, really goes to the role of a pastor with a church. The people have to be involved. You don't do church by committee. Okay? The people need to be there, and they are intended to have the blessings of God bestowed on them, and that can't happen unless you're present. And we'll also make note of the atmosphere that David tries to create along the way. Now, he's not going to get to do that the first go around because he messes it up and doesn't do it right. But when he does come back to do it right, you'll see that he has some other things that he does to involve the people in a certain way. Okay? We're going to run out of time before we get through this, but let's see how far we can get. And so David was displeased. I mean, he was upset. His plan is like, Lord, what are you doing? I'm trying to do something good for you, and what? I mean, come on, you know. He was upset that this had happened because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day, which means again what? Where'd Dave go? Oh, he stepped out. Okay, something to do with the word. Remember what the word was he just used? Somebody that does something prematurely without. Rashly, yeah, something along that line, I believe is what it was. And David was afraid of the Lord that day. Well, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? And said, how shall the ark of the Lord come to me?
How did they get to taking it in an ark in a cart anyway?
How?
Yeah.
I mean, why or how?
Well, no, the pattern was already established. When it went back to Israel, remember this. The Philistines put it in a cart.
Right.
And along with that gift, so to speak, so it was brought back by the Lord in a cart. And so, but the exactness as far as how it was to be carried had already been prescribed.
Right. Yeah. So that was the point earlier, was that they were observing the Philistines' methodology and picked that up instead of going back to the Lord's prescription, I should say, and going back to how God wants it done. That was the due order. 1 Chronicles 15:13 says the first time you did it, you did not follow the due order that was given to you. That's why it failed. Okay. Sam.
You can take it even further back. Well, why did the Philistines have the ark? Well, they had the ark because the children of Israel, they looked at the ark itself as if that was the power ark, and they were ignoring the Lord. Mm-hmm. And this is the same thing that's going on. You know, we'll just bring the ark back to Jerusalem because we'll get God's blessing because it's an ark. It's there, and I think the focus was on the ark, and they ignored the Lord. And we know that because they were using the cart when they shouldn't have been. And it's the same,
like a relic.
Yeah.
Instead they were looking at the ark instead of the Lord of the ark.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Anybody else, Brad?
Yeah, I hear that and take that point, but I'm trying to see what is the point of the passage. Is David's sin, is that sin the point of the passage here, or something else?
Well, we're not done with the passage, and so we probably won't understand appreciate the full point of the passage until we get the full picture of it. So this is part one this is the failed attempt to move the cart. David is confused right now about why God has killed somebody in his attempt to do good. We know from 1 Chronicles that God said it failed because you did not follow the prescription. So we know that's at least one of the points, is you're trying to do something good in a wrong way.
So that's in what verse?
Verse 13 of 1 Chronicles 15.
Chuck, isn't it?
Micah.
Yeah, two quick things. Piggyback off of that comment. The idea that when the children of Israel brought the ark of the Lord to the battle against the Philistines, they still lost, and the ark was captured. And it seemed like God had abandoned it. Mm-hmm. Then when they were moving it, God struck down this guy for touching the ark. In essence, demonstrating that the Lord had returned to the people of Israel to a certain degree and was expecting them to do
That's good.
the wrong
That's
way.
good.
Yeah, that's good.
The second thing is, do the prescription and doing it the right way. It shows, like we mentioned earlier, the covenantal relationship that God has with Israel. God didn't have a covenant with the Philistines.
Yeah.
He wasn't as strict with the Philistines.
That's right.
And I was thinking of this earlier. God doesn't have a covenant with our nation. And so he, thankfully, I think, deals with us to a certain degree a little bit more laxly than he would the children of Israel. And so I think that demonstrates in this position, God says, I have a covenant with you. I'm now back with you. I expect you to do it the right way. And to a certain degree, I think that's what the passage shows, is the covenant relationship.
Good.
Question is, could the Philistines have carried the Ark of the Covenant on the pole?
They didn't try, so I don't know. Maybe.
Well, it's not only that. It's not just only the carrying of it on poles. It was specifically a tribe that was to carry it.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, you know, in verse 9, David, after this happened, David was afraid of the Lord. And then he said, how shall the ark of the Lord come to me? You know, he had been a lot better off if he had asked that at the beginning versus at the end. But that goes to prove just one thing, that sometimes when God has something that he wants us to do, and we don't at first submit to his will, as a child of God, he'll bring us to that point sometimes.
That's good. That's excellent.
Yeah, I was going to come back to you anyway,
That's
so
excellent.
this is a good opportunity. Yeah. So just because because God tells us to do something in a certain way does not mean that's a template to do it again the same way. We know that from chapter 5 when David went out, he asked God, shall I go out and fight the Philistines? And God says, go, you're going to win. So David could have taken that as a template to go do it again, but he wisely asked the Lord, and God says, no, don't go out this time. I want you to go out the other way and come out where the mulberry trees are. God had a different way that time. I think the key to this is what you're hitting on, Bob, is that God always wants us consulting with him. He just wants to be involved. He wants to be directing. I don't want to say more involved. He wants to be directing our path. Okay? And that's the only way it's going to happen. And he's going to change it up, apparently,
and
to test us.
And we suppose
Pastor
always...
And then
excuse me.
Go ahead.
We suppose always acknowledge him.
Right.
You know, before you do anything. And if we did that, things would go right for us.
Right. So here's my question before we jump to Pastor and then Ed. It's easy to get on to David. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback here, but let's ask ourselves, how often do I, on any given day, consult with the Lord specifically about what I ought to be doing and how I ought to be doing it? I mean, really, come on, how often do you really do that? If you know, there's probably there's another lesson in this passage right there.
Here's a New Testament principle. James chapter 4. Go to now ye that say tomorrow, today or tomorrow we shall go into such a city, and continue there a year, buy and sell, and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life using a vapor that appears a little while and vanisheth away. Well, that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall do this or that.
Right. Ed?
Wow. These last comments, I didn't know where to bring this in, but in chapter 13 of 1 Chronicles, in verse 2, it says, And David said unto all the congregation of Israel, If it seem good unto you, and that it be of the Lord our God. So he's saying, well, you know, if it's good with everybody here, and it's good with God, let's do it. Well, he didn't go on. He did mention God here, but it's not like it's just a thing of passing, a word in passing. Well, let's think of what God wants us to do. Well, that he didn't. He said it, but he didn't do it.
Yeah.
If it be of God, if it be of the Lord our God, let us send abroad our brethren everywhere. And he mentions the Levites in here. Bring them together in that same verse. But he didn't do it the right way. But he didn't consult God.
Now, what chapter are you in right there? The 13 you said?
13 verse 2.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, it's interesting. Look at the very next verse. And let us bring again the ark of our God to us, for we inquired not at it in the days of Saul. So it's curious. He wants to bring the ark back so that they can inquire of the ark, but he doesn't inquire of the Lord about how to bring the ark back.
That's good.
So if you messed up in a lot of little things, you just kind of, well, we know what the procedure should be and how we should act and how we should consult the Lord, but let's make the decision. Let's get on with it.
Now, every time you go to do something right, you're always going to have, I think this is true, there's going to be naysayers. You're going to have your critics. And so let's look at the rest of this passage as far as we go. And I don't know how, again, if we'll get to this far, but if we don't get that far, read it on your own, because you're going to find that Michal, Michal, the wife of David, the daughter of Saul, therefore of Saul's lineage, probably a little wounded and sore from Saul's kingdom being taken away and David's being put in place, isn't exactly supportive. So just kind of keep your eye out for that. Okay, so what happens now? Just to bring it down to conciseness here, the ark. David does a timeout. Okay, he puts the ark over with a family, Obed-Edom, the Gittite, and it's there for 3 months. David is trying to figure out what to do. Now it takes 3 months for people to begin to notice that something really good is happening with Obed-Edom, the Gittite. Things are going really good. That's not very much time. The presence of God in this fashion, I have to believe that this person, Obed-Edom, and you'll see his name, if you actually did a Bible study, you would see his name come up again and again and again in passages relating to the protection of the ark going forward and involved with it. But it says in verse 11, and the ark of the Lord continued in the house of Obed-Edom. I know I skipped a verse. In the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. And it was told King David, saying, the Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that pertaineth unto him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the household of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. Now you have to go to 1 Chronicles 15 to see how this second time was done. So flip over to Chronicles 15, where we were also today. This time David gathers all these people from, and he assembles them, and you get all the names of the people, and he does it in a very, very organized fashion. And you have an accounting of who all is involved, and you've got the priests involved, the Levites, verse 11, and he tells them what their role is. That you're supposed to be involved. Sanctify yourselves, therefore. He tells them to sanctify themselves. Get ready for this event. Verse 13, we've read it, but let me reread it. For because ye did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us, for that we sought him not after the due order. So the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel. And the children of the Levites bear the ark of God upon their shoulders with the staves thereon, as Moses commanded them, according to the word of the Lord. Okay? So now we're getting we're getting it right. And David spake to the chief of the Levites to appoint their brethren to be singers. So now we've got, I want you to just you don't have to underline in your Bible if you don't want to, but just note the different voices and instruments that are all involved here. We've got singers, we've got instruments of music, we've got the psalteries and the harps, and the cymbals, and they're all sounding, lifting up the voice with what? Joy. This is a worship, praise time, right? David, the leader, is making sure that this is a praise event. And I think this is incumbent upon all leaders to bring the people into a position of praise and worship, a joyful worship of the Lord. That's got to be from the top that comes, Pastor. I know you have a music director. I know that. But sometimes it's just a blessing when you get up there in the pulpit and lead a song. It really is. I know that, Brother Dave doesn't mind when you do that from time to time. Let's worship the Lord together.
Amen.
In joy. And the people need to see the leader worshiping God and seeing the spirit of joy in the heart of that individual, of that man. I think we have to see that.
That's good.
Bob?
Maybe I'm different. I don't know, but you are. But the Lord seems to just speak to me in my heart when I'm coming to church for worship, that my attitude, my spirit, my thoughts, my whole intent from the minute I step in to the auditorium should be worship. From the opening song to the closing prayer, everything in between should lift me up, should draw me to Christ. And that's kind of the attitude I try to come with. Satan's always on the shoulder, kind of throw a rock at it. But, the times that I do, the Lord's just blessed me with scripture or something from the message. And when I worked with the teens, I used to use it now because I'd hear teens say, I don't get nothing out of church. And I said, well, let me tell you what. Walk over to that Coke machine, stand there and holler, kick it, and tell them you want a soda out of it. And see if you get anything out of that. I said, now take it and put your dollar bill in and see what you get. Sometimes you get in church, what you put into it, you get out of it. If you come not expecting anything, you're not going to get it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to set this up for next week because I think this is going to lead into the criticism of the worship service that we have here. Okay. I know a lot of you have something to say about this. Okay. But there's going to be a criticism of the worship service. Okay. There's a right way to worship and a wrong way to worship. There's also going to be criticism of the right way of worship. All of those are going to come into play here. I think we ought to sort of look through it and parse it out.
That's good.
David is going to take off his robes of royalty and put on linen ephods. That was not the ephods were for the priest, but it was a kind of common garment for the priest. And Michal, the daughter, thinks that's inappropriate, that he's lowering himself in this way. And David's remark, as you will see, he defends that by saying, hey, I'll lower myself however far I need to worship my God. I'll put myself in my proper place. I know where my place is. But I want us to kind of look at this from the perspective of what does God approve? What does joyful worship of God look like? And should we look at what we do carefully? And there's two extremes here. There's the world's craziness. I mean, you've got these practically heavy metal bands, going on. I don't see that lining up with due order, okay? But I also don't see sitting in church glumly with no emotion at all matching up with what David does here. So I think there's got to be an appropriate middle ground here somewhere. Dave, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to shoot a different duck here, I guess, but in verse 11 and 12, it's mentioned twice here that the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. And it was told King David, saying, the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that pertaineth unto him. He got a blessing that other households did not get. Is that something that's just germane to him, or is there something that we can obtain, receive, pray for today that is over and above the blessings that others might get?
About that?
I was just going to say, it just might be because, the ark represents the presence of God.
Yes,
And where the presence
right.
of God is, it's where blessing is.
That's
I
right.
think for us to see blessing in our own lives, God has to be there. He has to be present in our lives.
Well, also, when the ark was taken away, Israel brought it down to the war so that basically they would win the Lord. They wanted the presence of the Lord there, and even the Philistines just remarked, "Oh, their God, this ark." They brought the ark down, and man, we're doomed. And the fact of the matter is, they lost, and so that the presence of that ark and the blessing upon that home was just a beautiful picture, and that is that the Lord is still with you. He's still with this ark.
I think it's just interesting. David's carrying it, a guy dies, and so they give it to Obed-Edom. It's like, here, you take it. It's just and you feel bad for him because it's like, oh, I get that. And then the Lord blesses him.
Right.
It'd be interesting, and we don't know, but it'd be interesting if he was told, "You're going to take the ark because your house is the closest," or did this guy volunteer to take it? And if he volunteered to take it, it's like, I just saw a man die because he touched this thing, and we don't know if the wrath of God is going to continue to pour out. Should I open up my house for the wrath of God to continue? But yet it doesn't. And there needs to be a sign that God shows David that it's okay to proceed. Okay, you got to do it the right way.
That's right.
I have not forsaken you.
Right.
I'm not going to annihilate you.
Right.
But I need to show you that I'm with you. It's okay to proceed, but you must do it my way.
Thank you for saying that, because it just reminds me of, remember what I said towards the beginning, that one of the lessons of today is how do we react when we're chastised, okay? This is important, that we don't withdraw and quit and give up. That's what so many people do. Well, I tried, it didn't work out. No.
I'm glad that more light was shining on this art, because I was just sitting here wondering, so much is said about it. Just what does it represent? And Drew did pretty good on bringing that up, and the pastor as well. But I've been carrying my little box around called it the Ark of the Covenant, and I really didn't understand all it really meant. But the spirit of it let me know it meant something.
Good. That's good.
And they that worship God must worship Him in spirit and in truth. And that's the part where, when we really worship in God, as Dave said, when we come in the house of God, we ought to come in there with the Spirit of God in mind. Everybody. And I think we'll see a lot of hallelujahs.
That's interesting, those two words, the Spirit, but Spirit in worship in spirit and in truth. Truth is important too, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's the balance right there. Those are the two parallel rails. We better quit. We're going to.
I know everyone was ready to go.
Go ahead.
We don't fully appreciate and understand what this ark represents. And the fact that it's not just a box covered in gold, but this is the very, very place, the mercy seat between those angels, the very, very place where God dwells. Okay.
Yeah.
And as Sam pointed out, the holiness of God, it cannot mix with the sinfulness of man. These Levites had to prepare themselves.
Right. Right.
So I now ask you or challenge you that when you come to worship tomorrow, are you coming with the mindset of you're coming into the very presence of God? Because if you are, it will dictate and mandate how you act and what you do and how you do it.
And what you get.
And what you get. All right? As Bob has pointed out so much from his heart, that it's coming into the presence of God, it's experiencing God. Most people come because, hey, I'm fulfilling my hour obligation as being a Christian. But when I come in the presence of God, you know, there's some times I just have to close my eyes because I don't care about the people around me. I just want to close mine.
Yes.
Amen. Praise God. Praise God. Amen.
It's me and God.
That's right.
And you might be sitting next to me. It's nothing disrespectful, but you know, it's like, what's the Holy Spirit want me to do here? And so you know, that's what I come for.
Too much of us and not enough of the Spirit.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. All right, it's been rich. It's been good. Thank you. It wouldn't be this if you all didn't come and make your wonderful comments and contributions and ask questions and make it what it is. Where'd Andrew go? Oh, Ed, you doing the songs. I'm sorry.
Let's turn to page 414, Trust and Obey. I don't want to sing the chorus after the first verse, but I want to sing the chorus after the last verse. We'll sing first and last verse. The chorus after the last verse. Chorus after the last verse, not after the first verse. We want to sing the first and last.
Got it.
All right. When we walk with